Welcome to The Outlet, an OTG production.
What's up, NBA fans? Welcome to another edition of The Outlet. With me, as always, Parth.
Yo, what's up?
What's up, Parth? And today we have another guest, again, John, an OTG editor and writer. How you doing, John?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
No problem. Today's team at number 15, the Utah Jazz. Before we talk about that ranking, here's a clip from last season.
Marcus Morris stepping right into it. 11 for 17, 30 points in 28 minutes.
Cocked it back. That was dope.
That was a great play by Hayward. I know last year he got a lot of hate on for not being strong in the paint. This year he's throwing down on people. That wasn't his only posterization.
Yeah, I got mad love for Gordon Hayward. I could talk about him for hours. We'll have to do a separate podcast just about me, just talk about my infatuation with everything about him.
The Gordon tribute.
That's Butler on Duke Crime right there. That's a revenge.
Oh, yeah. Payback.
That's national championship revenge.
There we go. But let's talk about the rank for the Jazz. Do you think 15 is a fair rank for Utah?
I think 15 is fair. They got a lot of young talent, bright future, and I think with Gobert in the starting lineup, losing Exum hurts, but I think they'll be a pretty good team competing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, that second half of the season after they traded Cantor, they really picked it up. They finished with one of the top records. Gobert and Favors were dominant in the paint.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good ranking for them. I think now they have like legitimate expectations or playoff aspirations and expectations. So I think putting them at this slot doesn't overrate them too much.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say they have a good chance at laying the 8th seed. But let's talk about key returners for this upcoming season. They have a lot of guys coming back, not a lot of offseason moves. Who needs to step up this year?
Rodney Hood off the bench, I think he's got to step it up and be a big-time scorer. Their bench is pretty weak. And they have so many guys that besides their starting five, I don't really recognize like any names off the bench. And I think they just need a big-time scorer who can come in off the bench, give you 12 points a game, someone you can rely upon every night. And I think Hood's got to step up and be that guy.
Yeah, one guy I like is Alec Burks. He's coming off injury. A lot of people predict him to have a breakout season this year. What's your thoughts on him?
I personally like Alec Burks, but I feel like he's been hurt every year he's been in the league. So that's a little worrisome. He did have a really nice move on Kobe Bryant like last preseason that blew up on Vine and Twitter and all that. So that's nice. It's nice to see him have like a little bit of a two-guard flash in him. But my personal pick is Trey Burke, especially with Dante Exum out. They really need him to play like a starting caliber point guard.
Yeah, they definitely do. He played well off the bench, I think, at the end of last season, but they need him to play starter minutes this year, especially with Exum out. Then obviously you have Gobert having a full season as a starter. That should help him take the next step too.
Yeah, or Burke and Burks. I think Burks, I'm looking at his stats. He's got first year he played 59 games, second year 64, third year he only missed 4 games, but last year he only played 27. So I agree. I think he's got to stay healthy. And then losing Exum is just such a blow because they had such a good rhythm with Burke coming off the bench, and I think the way he was kind of like their reliable scorer, and now he's got to start. So now they need a reliable scorer coming off the bench.
Yeah, it definitely hurts in bench scoring because, like you said, now they're going to need him to play starter minutes. Who's going to come off the bench and fill in that role? They're going to need someone to step up as a scorer. But let's talk about off-season moves for the Jazz. They added a few international players. Probably some people don't know. They only lost Jeremy Evans. What moves do you like? What moves do you not like?
I'm okay with Trey Lyles because they kind of needed a stretch four. They had a couple guys that were bangers like Booker and Favors. They needed someone who could stretch the floor at that position, and I think Lyles is a good fit. He's got a nice jumper. But the rest of these guys, I've never even heard of any of them. Hanlon, I know, played at Boston College. He was a pretty good scorer there. But like O'Brien, Pleiss, and Nadeau, I've never even heard of these guys before. So I can't really comment on how good they are or anything.
J.J. O'Brien, San Diego State, I believe.
Yeah, that's a name drop.
Yeah.
Neto, I think, was a Brazilian point guard. He played a little bit in the FIBA games, but I don't know if he's ready to come and have an impact right away. Plias, I think, is a 7'2" big man from Germany. He could maybe see some minutes off the bench, but I think that it's more about going forward because they're going to have trouble attracting free agents. They need to develop these international guys.
Well, Raul Neto probably will have to play now that Dante Exum is hurt, and Utah needs backup minutes at the point from someone.
Yeah, it'll either be between him and Bryce Cotton probably.
Yeah. I think they need a more veteran presence off the bench to play point guard. And then I think one guy we forgot was Jeff Withey from Kansas. They signed him. I think he's going to end up being their backup center over Plyce, unless Plyce proves otherwise. But
yeah, I agree with that. The veteran presence, they probably need that, a little bit of leadership to help these young players develop and get ready to take that next step.
I think with such a quiet offseason in terms of additions and subtractions, I think their biggest move was getting rid of Enes Kanter last season during the trade deadline. They got a lot of good picks in return for him, and they didn't have to pay that max. They didn't have to pay that max dollar that OKC now has to pay for him, and they improved. So I think that's definitely their best move, even though it didn't happen in the offseason.
Definitely, because that opened up minutes for Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert. It was a trio splitting a lot of time. Then you had Booker getting in minutes too, but those two were able to shine when Kanter left, and the defense picked it up a lot. But let's talk about X factors. Who do you think's the biggest X factor for the Jazz this season?
Who or what?
True.
I mean, they have. I think their biggest X factor. The article I wrote about the Jazz, just some stats I'm throwing out. They ranked first in passes per game, but they were 29th in assists and 26th in points per game. But their offensive efficiency was in the middle. It was near the middle of the league. So they're not taking enough shots. And I think when you got Favors and Gobert down low, why wouldn't you take more shots and use the rebounding advantage there? So I think that's their biggest. That's the biggest X factors for them is just taking more shots. And I think obviously player development, Burke, Hayward, Gobert, all those guys coming along is pretty important to them too.
Yeah, I'm going to tag along with that player development. I think saying their offseason they didn't really make a lot of moves, that tells you a lot about the team because they think they're going to make a lot of development internally. So I think they can too because Gordon Hayward, Rudy Gobert, Derek Favors, Trey Burke, Alec Burks, they're all young guys who can take that next step.
I think their X factor has to be Trey Burke at the point guard position now that Dante Exum is out. I know I mentioned this earlier, but Exum's really their prized possession from last year and took the starting point guard role from Trey Burke, who they drafted 2-3 years ago, I believe. And now Trey Burke, which I think he's better suited as a backup, but he's going to have to play starters minutes and play well for this team to reach their potential this upcoming season.
That's a fair point. He's going to need to step up as a playmaker too, make sure he gets Gobert and Favors easy shots in the paint. What do you think's best case scenario for the Jazz this season?
Best case I think is the 8th seed in the West. Maybe 7th seed, but I think that the first 6 spots in the West are all pretty much solidified. And I think New Orleans, they always have that issue with injuries, but with Anthony Davis, I think they're almost like solidified as well. So I think the 7th spot at the most, but 8th seed is probably more realistic. I'm not sure if they'll be better than New Orleans.
Yeah, my best case scenario would be the 8th seed as well. I think it's great for the team to get in the playoffs, get a little bit of experience, gives them a taste of the playoffs, and then hopefully they can build off of that.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. But I'm a little higher on Utah than I am with New Orleans, just because New Orleans, their entire roster is made of glass.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know you mentioned it, but I really do think Utah, if they develop like the way we all think they will, and if they can stay healthy, they can definitely get that 7th seed. But like with both teams, we mentioned New Orleans and Utah, they both have health and injury concerns. So it's whichever team can survive the battle of attrition, I think we'll get that 7th spot.
That's a fair point. What do you guys think's worst case scenario for the Jazz?
I really can't see them being. I guess worst case would be last year was a fluke, or the second half of last year was a fluke, and they end up, being a horrible team in a tough Western Conference. At least they'd end up with a lottery pick again. But I guess worst case maybe is that for the fans, but then worst case for the team's outlook is being a middle of the pack team that doesn't make the playoffs, and you end up with a late lottery pick.
Yeah, worst case for me, I'm going to say they missed the playoffs. They struggle offensively. They still are able to grind out games, but they just can't get the points to win those games. So, what about you, Parth?
Well, this team was the worst in the league in pace. They play the slowest pace in the league. I don't think that is conducive to winning nowadays, especially if you're not someone like Memphis with two legitimate low post bruisers and scorers. Rudy Gobert isn't really a scorer. Derek Favors he's okay as a scorer, but he's more of like I'm going to get it off the board and slam it on your head kind of guy, in my opinion. So I think if they don't increase that pace, they'll be left where they were last year, and that's just outside of the playoffs and with another high lottery pick, or late lottery pick, I should say. I think that's definitely the worst case because this team definitely has playoff potential.
I agree with that. That's a good point. But let's talk about the truth. And today's emoji is a waving hand to signify Rudy Gobert blocking everything in the paint.
He has some of the best nicknames. The Stifled Tower. I heard Matt Weiner say during the rookie-sophomore game, you don't want to go bare in terms of you don't want to go bare into the paint.
Very true. So talking about that, where do you guys see the Jazz as a League Pass team? Are you going to watch them this year?
I always watch the Jazz because of Hayward, and I like Alec Burks. So they're up there with like the Magic and the I guess the Pelicans. Where if the Knicks aren't on, though, that's the team I usually turn on.
They only have 3 national TV games. So if you do want to watch the Pelicans, or do you want to watch the Jazz, it'll have to be on League Pass. I think I will. That pace that I mentioned earlier, how they're the slowest in the league, kind of hurts because that's not really that exciting to watch. But they do have they do have players, and they have definitely names that can light up the scoreboard.
Yeah, definitely. You got Gobert with the huge blocks and dunks. Favors throws it down. Hayward, we just showed a couple nice dunks from him, so I'm definitely going to watch the Jazz on League Pass. I also like to pick a lot of their guys in fantasy, so I'm always watching their games. All right, guys, here's a tough question. Would you rather watch the Utah Jazz or Dragon Ball Z?
Depends. Right now I'm on the fight in DBZ where Majin Vegeta takes on Goku, so it's tough. It's tough to turn that off. But the Jazz are an exciting young team. I think I'd probably have to go with DBZ on this one.
Parth?
Yeah, that's a good fight. I've seen Dragon Ball Z so many times that I'd probably watch the Jazz, but that doesn't mean I won't turn that game off halfway and watch a scene or two.
Unless it's some Dragon Ball Z episode I've never saw before, I'm going with the Utah Jazz.
Dude, there is a new DBZ series that they have in Japan right now called Dragon Ball Super. Yeah. I haven't seen it. I'm just waiting probably for like the next 2-3 years when Funimation does the English dub of it. But
yeah.
I actually caught the subtitle version of it a little bit, but I'm just not big on subtitles, so I couldn't watch the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
My friend actually said the subtitles are better because you get a better feel for the characters when it's like actual Japanese voices as opposed to dubbed American or Australian voices, whatever they use. But
yeah, the voices are completely different if you ever get a chance to listen. But thank you guys for listening. And for our next team, you might need a passport.